Hi, welcome to the Connection Podcast. I'm Lauren Dry, also known as the Connection Catalyst. Connection and this podcast for me is personal. As a driven professional, I found myself an expert in all things work and business, but it was at home that I really needed clarity and ease. After finally finding it, one marriage breakdown and reset later, and finally discovering what it really looks like to have connection in modern relationships, using science, simplicity and soul, our signature program Rise into Regulation was born. That's giving so many others in modern driven relationships back clarity and ease for good. On the podcast today, we have a guest and we are going to go deep together on all things relationships, business, identity and leadership. Clarity and ease is at the heart of it all, and we are so happy to be with you so that you can have what you need in connection, mind, body and soul too. I am so privileged to welcome into the podcast today Lauren Rogers. Lauren is the founder and director of NeuroBalance Clinic, and her depth and passion around the brain, the body and relationships is exactly why we are having Lauren on the podcast today. Not only that, she's a wonderful friend of mine, so we are so lucky to have her with us. Welcome to the studio, Lauren.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
I was fascinated last week when I came into your office and we did a brain scan together. I'll be honest, I was a little intimidated.
Okay.
I mean, I've done a lot of work myself. I'm really passionate about regulation, and I know a lot of my listeners are going to really relate to this. When you've done a lot of work and you really take pride in your regulation and how you navigate yourself and your health. Oh man, the amount of vitamins, like I'm on that train. But walking into a clinic and having a scan and having an analysis on the state of my nervous system, it was a bit intimidating. I am not going to lie. And I was really, really curious about a couple of things. The first thing I was really curious about was how visible really is it? How tangible is it to be able to have a clear, data-driven picture of the state of my nervous system? I think a lot of people really wonder how much of this is really in our heads. Are we, as long as things look okay on the outside and you can push through, I think there's an element to how medication can help us cope with stressful events in life. So I, particularly as someone who specializes in the nervous system, in relationships, and that felt sense of what it means to be grounded, have confidence, to have that ease, I was so fascinated about what this was going to look like and intimidated, not going to lie.
But you did it good, right?
I was like, am I going to walk in here thinking like I'm a, just Zen absolute master and then walk out going, well, we're going to start again.
No.
So I was really, really curious, really, really fascinated by what you do. And I would love to set the scene and allow the audience to understand a little bit more about what it is that you do, why it's important, and why it's such a fascinating extra tool you can have in your toolkit. One, the analysis. So we had some data. I've got some clips to put up. This is really fascinating of the scans themselves. So what we did was at Lauren's clinic, we did a scan of my brain before the BrainTap, and we'll go a little bit deeper in a second about what BrainTap is. And then did the BrainTap exercise and used that machine. And then afterwards we did a scan. So these results, for me personally, are incredibly fascinating. But as someone who's a specialist in this field, it was really, really mind-blowing to see, first of all, the results, the tangible results that happen when we have access to regulation, the effects on the body, but also as a felt experience. It's amazing what we have access to now and the new science in this field, but also personally, I'm really excited to, as we go through the podcast a little bit deeper, just hear how much of an effect this has had on your life, not only personally, but for your kids as well. So I'd love to start by asking you, what is neurotechnology and what would most people who'd be listening today not know about it and what might take them by surprise?
So I use a form of neurotechnology called brain entrainment. It's a really simple, passive neurotechnology that can help change your brainwave state. And when we can change our brainwave state, we can change the impact on our nervous system. So for a lot of people, we live very stressful, very complicated lives, and it can be quite difficult to access that parasympathetic state. So having a machine that you can press a button and it can do that for you can have huge implications for stress management, for people with anxiety, for neurodivergent people. Stress and the health of our bodies is really applicable to everyone.
For people who are just dipping their toes into neurotechnology, neuroscience, how would you explain to someone why a parasympathetic nervous system state is so important?
So when we're in a parasympathetic state, we probably know that more commonly as the rest and digest state. And we know our sympathetic nervous system as that fight or flight. So our sympathetic nervous system is really beneficial in certain situations. But if we can't move back into that parasympathetic state afterwards, that causes dysfunction in the nervous system and it has a huge amount of health impact. So when we're in a parasympathetic state, that is when our body is digesting food and taking on nutrients. That is when it's in a recovery state, tissue repair. It can impact your immune function. I mean, it can impact almost every part of the body. So if we're not able to access that state, it can be really damaging to our health now and long term.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so fascinated by the physical aspects of this. And I've touched on it on the podcast before. Something I found really, really fascinating when I was probably at my most stressed but things looked the best on the outside was when my body was really starting to break down in the most unexpected ways. So I had a lot of issues with my gut, but it's interesting for each individual how our health can be affected. For me, it wasn't until it started to affect my outward appearance that I started to take notice and stopped burying my head in the sand. I had eczema all up and down my arms, most interestingly in my elbows, all up and down my back, all over my face, acne as a grown adult, if anyone has experienced that or is experiencing that. Oh, we want to say it's fine, it's no big deal, but it's just, I was so visually hit in the face with the fact that my body was not coping. And it was a really alarming wake-up call for me to realise that we can't disregard the link between the mind and the body. Pushing through our relationships, pushing through parenting, pushing through and just having that, oh, things look great and they're fine. So having that external validation can almost be harder than when things externally don't look so great, because it really places a lot of self-accountability on our own shoulders to challenge that independence wound that so many of us have. If I can do it on my own, I'm going to do it. And interestingly, probably the one that took me off guard the most and gave me a wake-up call was when I started to get these tiny little rashes on the tips of my fingers. So in terms of sensory interruption in my life, it doesn't get more specifically than that, literally at the tips of my fingertips. And that's when I really started to dive deep into the link between the mind and the body and why it's so important. But what kind of health challenges are you seeing, and what are probably the most powerful reflections that you're seeing that match the data around an imbalanced nervous system that you're seeing in your clinic physically?
So I think just to touch on what you've mentioned there, I think we are conditioned to just constantly be on the go. We are always on, we are always available, more so than ever before. And our body was never supposed to live in a world like this. Our nervous system is still the same nervous system from 2,000 years ago. And there is no way, evolutionarily speaking, that it could catch up to the way technology is moving forward as quickly as it is. We could never evolve at the same speed in which our world is evolving. So I think that it's really common. I think that it's really common for people to have these physical effects of stress that they can push through and just keep going. Whereas if you broke your leg, people say, oh, you've broken your leg, just relax, lie down, you'll heal, blah, blah. But we don't have that same compassion or understanding when it comes to stress. And it is an epidemic. The World Health Organization looks at mental health as an epidemic around the world. We're in an epidemic in Australia here in terms of mental health crisis. It is one of the biggest burdens on the health system in WA. So it's hugely important, but we are conditioned to just keep pushing it aside. And
and it's a badge of honour.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm operating on, 4 hours sleep and look at me go. And
and even everything from like the extracurricular activities for the kids. There's no line between work and home. The pressure we place on ourselves to be on all the time as well, for family, for friends, for, and it's important. We can't just switch off from our relationships in the world, but I think it's so important to have a moment in time where we check ourselves and make that decision. Is my life driving me, or am I having a health check every once in a while and discovering what my own values are, where I'm in alignment, where I'm not, and where I just need some support? Learning how to ask for help. Oof. We all say, we're like, I'll sit here and I'll tell you, I'm there for you, girl.
Yeah,
and
just
like,
go. Will I call you?
I'm going to message you.
Maybe not.
Working on it.
But I think that's what you said about asking help. And back to your question around what's some of the most pronounced physical representations of people's stress that I've seen in the clinic, and I've seen a lot. I see kids as young as 5 all the way to 95. I see people who have chronic illness and how managing their stress, because that in itself is a really stressful experience to go through, how that can help their body recover, reduce inflammation. But I also know from, as you know, for a few years I was in a family court proceeding. If anyone's ever been in the family court before, that is incredibly stressful. Once you get on that train, once you are on that system, that's it. You are really not in control of what happens. You are just in that process and honestly just hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
And being someone who has studied psychology, who works with wellness technology, who knows all the things that I should be doing, who has access to some of the best wellness technologies in the world. I am so lucky to just be able to jump in to a hyperbaric chamber in the middle of my lunch break and do that. Despite all of that, the experience of going through family court, it's not that those things aren't effective in themselves, it's that experience is so profoundly stressful and traumatizing, and it really does change a person. So I was on medication, and again, not even really medication helped that much either. Yeah. So coming out of that experience, I then fell into a hole. So I was clearly just switched on and hanging on throughout the 3 years that we were doing that. And then once it was over and I kind of went, my body just completely collapsed. So for 3 months I was doing tests with my doctor, and I'm so grateful that I have such an amazing GP who was really working with me to figure out what was the problem. And we basically got down to, after 3 months, and he said, look, you either have cancer or you have Crohn's or something like that, and you need to go for a colonoscopy and an endoscopy. Turns out I had severe ulcers all through my stomach. Not caused by the bacteria one, which everyone always says, but that's caused by this. No. For a very small amount of people, it's purely stress. And they were so bad that I was bleeding out. So I couldn't walk around. I was constantly dizzy and fainting, basically because I had no iron in my body, because I was just bleeding out from these stomach ulcers. So the recovery from that process has been huge, and I'm really thankful that I have all these things that I can rely on, because it did take therapy to work through that. But I also do rely heavily on the BrainTap and on different technologies to get me through the day, because at the end of the day,
also to have that health check as well before, where am I at? Where am I pushing through and my body's starting to bear the cost?
Yeah. And for that process, there was no way to stop. There was no way to dial it back, to make it more manageable or anything like that. And I think while other people's stresses and responsibilities might not be to the same extent of going through a court process, sometimes you can't get off. Sometimes you can't get off the train. Sometimes it's not an option to work less or to not be available or dial back, as you said, the kids' extracurricular activities. Like when you do a life audit and you go, right, something's not working, what needs to go here?
Yeah.
I look at my list and I go, nothing can go.
Yeah.
This is all,
Yeah.
I don't think Synergy is going to understand if I don't pay my power bill.
Exactly.
It's because,
Right.
oh, look, I'm sorry, I've been really stressed out lately and I really need to take some time for me.
Yeah.
So that is where I see neurotechnology. That is where I see a modern solution to modern problems.
Absolutely.
So it's hugely important, and it's also it's deeply personal for me. Like this business was created not because of myself. I think if it was something to do with myself, I would wait till I'm bleeding out. That seems to be honestly pretty on brand. But for my kids, I would do anything to fix, to take away their hurt, to do anything. I would do anything. So this business really came about when my eldest son was going through just a huge period of anxiety in his life. And it was, again, I studied psychology, I studied childhood development. I know what we should be doing. I know, how we're supposed to be putting good things in place and tools and teaching him about this and that and all that other stuff. All good stuff. But again, so many things would happen that would derail what I was doing at home that I just had no control over.
Yeah.
And then with Miles, it became almost this self-fulfilling prophecy of the anxiety he would experience before a basketball game would then derail him at the game. And then he comes off the court in tears going, see, I'm terrible, I can't do it, blah, blah, blah. So there needed to be something to be this circuit breaker in what we were doing, because as hard as I was trying at home with him, with everything that I had in my arsenal to throw at this beautiful boy who has so much to give, and he was really struggling so much, was heartbreaking. That's when I thought, you know what, I'm aware of BrainTap, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get this for him, and we're going to start doing a regular program. Because by the time sometimes I would start putting things in place, he was so dysregulated, he was so anxious, he was so far gone that trying to talk to him in a way where you're trying to access the most logical parts of their brain in a child is difficult. And their brains aren't fully formed yet. But to try and access that part of him and use these tools when he was so far gone and so anxious and so dysregulated, it was, it was splashing water on like a forest fire. It was just doing absolutely nothing. Yeah. So once we started using the BrainTap, the difference in his anxiety levels was incredibly noticeable. And I think what I noticed first was not necessarily how he was when something big happened, but just his baseline level of anxiety just in day-to-day life. One of his signs was asking a lot of questions. Mum, do you know where we're going? Are you allowed to park there? But what time do we have to be there? Like, these are all the things that he would just naturally ask, and I'd be like, okay, oh my God, he's getting anxious. Like, oh, that gone. So calm. So, just the baseline level anxiety just dropped hugely. And then when he did start to say, oh, Mum, I think I'm starting to feel a little bit nervous and blah, blah, okay, let's breathe. Where do you feel that in your body? What is that? All those tools that you need to learn were landing so much better. And he was actually taking in that information, and we were having a discussion, and it was it was really beneficial. And those tools then worked in combination with the BrainTap.
I love how you explained that as though it was something that was accessible to him and to you when there's no other options. And for this, it's incredibly humbling when you're in a stage in your life where you don't have control. You don't have control. And all those old skills and mechanisms that have gotten you so far, they're not even touching the sides. It's you can't move left, you can't move right, you just have to cope in that moment. And I think that what you were saying about your stomach as well, rest and digest, the three things that get switched off when you're in a survival nervous system state, so your ability to learn, your ability to heal, and your ability to digest, because you don't need them when the tiger is chasing you.
Absolutely. You just need to run.
You just need to run.
You just need adrenaline and cortisol, and you just need to run. Yeah.
But we start to break down. We forget so often that our mind and our body is connected. We can't just leave one behind. So knowing that there are skill sets, support systems, I think what you pointed out right in the middle there was the ability just in the chaos to say, I need some help. And it doesn't matter whether it's going to fix all of the external noise or not, but this is going to support me to be able to navigate the most intense, the most powerfully core level challenges that any woman or mother would experience. And the fact that, first of all, you had that recognition that you were doing your best, but second of all, that you had the care and attention, the love and tenderness to say, I am determined. I am so determined to work with what I know, to use that as the support system that I need and that my boys need to get through this stage. I think that there are so many people who are listening to this who are going to feel so seen and heard about how the most important thing that we can do when life is falling apart is give ourselves grace. Just to give ourselves grace. Yeah. We're just people. We're human beings. I always say to my clients, we're human beings. We're just walking around and we've been given a human body, human challenges. And the inspiration that I took from how you moved through that is something that, I will always remember, and I'll always be grateful to you for just loving you through that. And I know it wasn't easy.
No, you saw me at you saw me at the absolute worst.
I did. And I want to say as well, from the person sitting on the other side, I felt privileged that I could be there with you, because we are we gain so much pride of I can do it myself. And I think we underestimate the gift that we can give other people by letting them love us.
Yeah.
So when it comes to not only what you experience personally, but with your son as well, I think it's so important to pause on that moment of how powerful, whether it's a neurotechnology tool, whether it's a somatic tool, whether it's an unconscious mind tool, whatever tool it is that you feel drawn to and that just gets you that little bit closer, it's so important that we pause and say, this is what neuroplasticity is. Mm-hmm. Because when you are able to start building new neural pathways that positively trigger a down-regulated state, the first time you do it, yeah, amazing. You might go home and then you've got to go straight back into that survival nervous system state and go, right, got to get it done, got to get things going. But that first little pathway has been placed. So then you go the next day, you do another somatic tool, or you do another, whatever it is that your nervous system feels safe enough to start to access, whether it's small or large. Each time you just do that one more time, you're creating this new neural pathway that the next time when things feel really hard is accessible because you've been walking along that so much. So I want to hear a little bit more about what exactly the BrainTap is and why, in terms of the toolkits that we're all so familiar with, whether it's your own somatic tools, whether it's your own meditation, whether it's breath work, whether it's the neurotechnology aspect to this, as someone who I am a fan of technology, but I'm also a huge skeptic, okay? Like if you peel back the layers, there is probably like a grumpy old woman who doesn't want to join the modern age. Like
Just lives off the grid and grows
I've got
her
my
own
chickens. I'm good. So like exploring neurotechnology, I'm not going to lie. There was a part of me that was like, oh gosh, what am I getting myself into? Is this placebo? Is this just kind of lights and colors that sound really cool that are going to give me a bit of a buzz for a short term, like watching a movie? Or, tell me a little bit in as simple way that you possibly can for someone like me who was very new to neurotechnology. What would you say to me pre-diving into this the way that I did about what neurotechnology is and how it actually works and the data behind it? What did you find so surprising and so fulfilling on a personal level, but also as someone who studies the brain?
So when we talk about neurotechnology, that's a very broad field. So when we go to the specifics of brain entrainment, again, that can be referring to various different technologies or modes of brain entrainment. And you can use light, you can use sound. In the BrainTap, we use both. So the brain naturally has this phenomena called the frequency following response. So our brains are naturally inclined to mimic certain frequencies that we get. And the history of brain entrainment and these neurotechnologies, you can go back 1,000 years. Why is it so comforting and soothing to watch a fire burning? What does that light stimulation do? Why is that so calming? What is so calming about the repetitive ocean noises that we hear? Why is that such a calming effect? These are all natural frequencies that our body aligns to for various different reasons. As people investigated brain entrainment more and more, then they discovered brainwaves. So if you think of your brain like a radio, we have different stations and we have different brainwave states for doing different things. So we have our workstation, we have our sleep station, we have all these stations in between, and they all have different frequencies of brainwaves. So once that was discovered, then it was like, oh, well, how can we use this frequency following response to elicit specific brainwave states and change the station? And that's what BrainTap does. BrainTap uses frequencies, light and sound, to change the station for you. So it specifically has frequencies. So for instance, binaural beats is a technology that's used in the BrainTap. Basically, you play one sound, one frequency through one ear, another frequency through another. The brain picks up those two frequencies, it senses the difference in the two, and it creates a third frequency, which is the difference. So if we want to induce delta brain waves, which we need for sleep, then you can adjust those frequencies to achieve that. With BrainTap, we typically target alpha and theta brain waves, and those are the brain waves that are associated most with calm focus, a meditative state, and so it has that really strong parasympathetic activity. In today's world, we are so locked into that sympathetic state that often people, their flexibility of their nervous system and their ability to switch out of that state and move into a parasympathetic state is really not within their control, or it is really difficult to do. And that's why a lot of people that I see generally say, I try and meditate or I try and do this, and it just doesn't work. And it's not because you are stuck in that sympathetic state, and it's really difficult. After a period of time of being in a chronic sympathetic state, your body creates a new baseline. It's used to having the cortisol and the hormones and everything flowing around. That's your new baseline now. So to think that you can be in that state for such a long time and then go and meditate or go on a retreat for a weekend and be like, oh, cool, I'm all better now, I'm all rest and digest and parasympathetic. It's not going to happen. You have physically changed your biology. And it's not something that you can't change back. Absolutely, the human body is an incredible thing and we are all capable of healing, but it is going to take a lot of time. And so using a passive technology that pushes you into that state is hugely beneficial. And I will, with the situation with Miles, as you were saying with the neuroplasticity, he ended up having a good experience and his good experiences started outweighing the bad. And so that self-fulfilling prophecy of, oh, I am terrible at this because look what happened, it became he would have good games or he would perform well in the school play or whatever it would be. And when he would start to feel, nervous about something and he'd go, oh, well, I'm not very good at it, we could point to real tangible things and say, but what about last week? Last week you did this, this and this. That was great. And he's like, oh, yeah, actually that did happen. It's not just telling your kid, no, you're wonderful, it's fine. No, he actually was doing those things. He could logically go, yeah, I did do that. Eventually, his good experiences outweighed the bad. If you asked him now, he's great. He's a great basketball player. He's good at, he was the lead in his class play. The change intervening at that time, I have no doubt changed the trajectory of his life, his inner self-talk and how he feels.
Yeah.
So it's hugely important to intervene, but also as a part of that process, his younger brother was using the BrainTap. I was using the BrainTap, and it became a discussion around this is what we do for good brain health. This is what we do for good mental health. This is something that we always have to do, and he's learnt now when he feels certain ways, he'll go, Mum, I need to do a BrainTap. Great, let's do a BrainTap. We're very much in a stage now where he wants a punching bag and things like that. Great. Great. Get that out of you. When you have these feelings, as you were saying, there's somatic therapies, which I'm a really big fan of, to do that. So there's
that curiosity that he's got already. That's amazing. That's like, I am dysregulated. I would like a punching bag.
Yeah.
I am dysregulated. I would like a BrainTap. That, I think, is what we all need. And that's what so many of us are missing, because we think that so many of our patterns and behaviors are who we are. And this is my identity. Without realizing, if we have just a bit of a gap and an understanding that so much of what we do and what we say is driven by our unconscious mind. They're automatic. And if we can create a little gap there, then we've got a lot more mastery. And I think a lot of people, they hold off from using somatic tools, from working with the unconscious mind, which we specialize with at Rise. They hold off from finding that regulation for themselves because there's that fear. Well, what if I feel good in a crappy situation? What's that if that's the only thing that I end up achieving? And I think what you said there is so important, because it has to be both. It has to be, I have room to see the good experiences, but now because I have an understanding and an interpretation of what the reality is that I'm working with, now I can create an evidence pattern to be able to make clear decisions. Okay, do I want to play basketball? Like, maybe I'm no good at basketball. Maybe I want to go play something else. Or is it...
We don't play basketball anymore.
Well, do you know what I mean?
He's moved on to other things.
But imagine if he had missed that opportunity to say, because of the rumination or the self-talk, and, for adults, it's resentment, it is bitterness, it is hidden trauma patterns. Is it me? Is it them? Is it us together? And I think what you said there is so powerful around that blend. Okay, come back, regulate, get some clarity, have some evidence around what you are working with. You are a good basketball player. And in relationships, it's, hey, what I'm asking for is pretty good. And now that I know how to speak into that really, really well, I'm creating an environment where there's room for that to be received. And if I'm not getting that, hey, that's okay. I can create an evidence pattern where I begin to get that in a different way. And that doesn't necessarily mean leaving your partner straight away, but it certainly means creating new boundaries where they either are invited to join you within those new boundaries, or then you've got two best case scenarios, okay? We don't end up together, but we're friends because we respect each other. Or the best case scenario, now we get to catalyze new change. And for kids, it's the same thing. It's not, how do I make myself feel better in a crappy situation? It's, hey, I actually now have evidence that I can do something that was hard. I have grit now. And that is an essential component to creating resilience in children, emotional resilience, having richness around their emotional capacity as well. That has a flow-on effect to their relationships. So that blend that he's now got of evidence, but also the regulation required to be able to see the evidence, to see I can do this, but now I can do it. Do I want to do it?
Yeah, but he got to make that choice, and so many people,
so much empowerment there.
when that was happening, turned to me and were like, maybe it's just not for him. Like maybe it's just not his sport. Why don't you just let him quit? I said no, because he loves it. He loves going to training. It's this that's causing him such distress, and that's not how you develop confidence. You don't develop confidence and then do the hard thing. You do the hard thing and that gives you the confidence. Yeah. So it was just, it was a great experience. As a mum who was in the clinic a while ago whose son had level 3 autism, her comment was, doing this and then going to these social engagements and things like that, he's so much calmer. Everyone gets to see who I see at home when he's at his best.
Right.
He's not a different person. We're just seeing him at his best. And that's so much of Miles is so funny and he's so lovely and he's so lively. It was so wonderful for other people to be able to see that side of him and not just see him as this anxious kid who was really struggling.
Right.
And so it's always wonderful, and each client is unique and has unique challenges, and it's always really such a privilege to be able to be with someone during a really hard period and offer them some relief or offer them some support. But I have to say, this business was born through the idea of that. What an amazing thing to be able to intervene in a young child's life and change something that is going to influence their self-esteem and their self-worth and their perception of who they are for the rest of their life. And so it is maddening sometimes from what I see how people can be dismissive of these, I guess, and minimise these moments when they are such key turning points in children's lives. And we're not just one thing. We are a series of things that have happened to us through our lives that have shaped us and created this person. So it's really, really wonderful. And all the kids that I do get to work with they're just gorgeous. And it's so lovely. It's so great to see the data and see the physiological changes. But I have to say the feedback that you get from parents about what happened is
That's
really,
the fun stuff.
It's just, that's the stuff that that's so nice.
Speaking of results.
Yes.
I'm excited and a little nervous. Should we go over my results?
Yes.
So for the audience, last week I went into Lauren's clinic and I had a brain scan. When I first came in, it was a little chaotic when I first came in. 2 kids in tow, was in between appointments. So again, I was looking forward to it, but was a little bit, okay, it's a brain scan and it's going to be great and I'm going to do the exercise and I'm going to feel good. It's going to be great. Going through the motions a little. But it was so fascinating to me to see how observable that was. That was tangible. You could see that on the scan. I'm walking in there like, I'm good. Everything's great. My nervous system is great. Oh, girl, let's have a look. Sit down. And then the experience itself of having the BrainTap. Oh, it was so lovely. Oh, it was just, and I like the word that you used there, passive.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the work that we do with our clients is to break things down so they're simple. Breath work is really powerful, but I don't know about you. Anytime I've done breath work, it's also incredibly activating. It's not something that you would do in the middle of your lunch day. So a lot of the tools that we support our clients with are things that you can use in the moment. And I tell you right now, sitting there in that BrainTap and having that experience, oh, it was so restful. It just felt like such a breath of fresh air, and I felt different afterwards. And that was powerful.
Yeah.
So I'd like to go over the results with you.
All right, should we see? I'll give you a copy of your results.
All right, here we go.
So along with the BrainTap, we use heart rate variability. So it's a really simple assessment to take. It's just 2 clamps on the wrist and it's measuring 300 heartbeats. Then from that, we get time and frequency domain analysis, which I'm not going to go too far into because it's a lot of fun.
Sounds great though.
Yes. It's a lot of maths. But basically taking 300 heartbeats and the variation between those heartbeats can tell us a huge amount about our nervous system balance. So when we do a report for our clients, we break it into 4 different categories. So we have vagal tone and parasympathetic activity. We have autonomic flexibility and your stress balance. We have acute stress and regulatory load. And then we have neural humoral regulation. Now, what I would have to say, generally speaking, the results from your first scan, your baseline data, it was okay. It was pretty good. It definitely showed that you were stressed. It definitely inferred that you have been stressed for a little while. So
I'm working on my sleep, guys.
I know, yeah. I know what you've been doing. So I know that you've been working really hard. And so that tracked. That was, I think, kind of expected. But the changes that we saw post BrainTap was such a wonderful response. And it confirmed the fact that you still do have a lot of flexibility within your nervous system, because putting you in the BrainTap elicited such a strong parasympathetic response. And that's not always common. So people, as I said before, people who have been in a chronic state of sympathetic activation often find it really difficult to access the parasympathetic. And so often we see really different individual responses from people, but we also take this measurement. We do it at the first appointment and then we take it at the 10th session as well. And it's by taking those multiple data points that we can start to see the effect of the BrainTap, and we can infer what benefits they're having from doing that and what shift we're seeing in the various systems in their body.
Yeah.
So I think when we're talking about vagal tone, that's probably the most important part for your results here. Yeah. And on here we look at high frequency power there, and the normative range sits between 770 and 1078, and you were sitting at 273.
Fun.
So not not within the norm.
Work for improvement.
Exactly.
Room for improvement.
Another marker, the PNN50, is another marker of vagal tone. And again, the normative range is 15 to 34. Again, you were sitting at 7. So what you were speaking to before about, is it a placebo effect or things like that? I mean, look, I studied psych. The placebo effect is very real. It's a very, very real thing.
Oh my gosh, if anyone has ever looked into, what's that documentary about the placebo effect? It's fascinating. The power of the brain is a very, very cool thing. But yeah, I really wanted to speak into that as if you're a skeptic about the power of the placebo effect, the power of the brain. But yeah. If you look into drug trials and things like that and how they have to manage the placebo effect, what they have to do, it's a very, very real thing. But when we look at these data points, we can see that not only was there one data point that suggested that you had low vagal tone, there were several data points that were supporting that. So when we go through the report, we have one main metric and then we have supporting metrics underneath that, because everyone's nervous system profile is incredibly unique, responds differently. So we need to be able to have different supporting data points to create this full picture. Yeah. Post BrainTap, your high frequency power shot up to above the normative range. So it went to 1,308. Your PEN50 went within normal ranges, so that went up to 31. So there was a really strong parasympathetic response to your first BrainTap session, which is excellent, and it's exactly what we want. Yeah.
When we look at your HRV index score, this is the metric that points mostly to long-term effects in the body. The other metrics are probably more of the moment and can be influenced more readily. This speaks a little bit more to long-term stress. So again, normative range 20 to 50, you started at 9. Post-session, that jumped up to 17. So not within the normative ranges yet. So we want, if you're coming in to see me, we would continue
Which I am.
on.
I'm going to come back regularly because I really, really loved it.
Well, then, so we would continue on,
Yeah.
and we would hope that if we continue to activate your
Hyperbaric
parasympathetic,
chamber, that's what I want.
yeah. If we continue to do this, that we would see that score would slowly shift.
Yeah.
And this is one of the scores that we look at. So in the 10th session, have we seen the HRV index move over the course of someone's program? What can we see from that? So that's another really big metric.
And I love how we're able to do this in a season. So I love what you mentioned there about working with what you had, where in a circumstance you had to work with the circumstance you had. So I'm in a season, and what I talk to my clients as well is make sure if you have deadlines, they're SMART, SMART. Sorry, the T standing for time-based. This is something I always say. If you're going to be in a stressed state, do your best to manage the time. So my husband and I have some grand plans that we're working towards, but it is requiring above the normal energetic input that we're putting in. Yeah, stay tuned for the next couple of months while we smash those deadlines out. But loving reminder, if you are working above your capacity, keep it timed, guys. Keep it timed. Don't keep it sustained. But this has been wonderful, like as an extra tool in my toolkit. And I just really loved how it was an opportunity to get out, and have that extra space. I do a lot of the work when I'm together with my clients, so co-create that space with them, which is really good. But having that opportunity to get out and away and coming into your clinic was really cool as well. I loved that.
I'm the type of person that needs a trainer, or I need to sign myself up for a class, or otherwise it'll get to the end of the day and I will push something.
Exactly.
So a lot of people, I'm like, no,
Yes.
you need the appointment.
Yeah.
You need that standing appointment every week to not let this just
Like a
become
coach.
a casual. Exactly.
Like a coach, guys.
Exactly.
You need a coach.
You need accountability. The intrinsic motivation, sometimes is not
But
high
it
enough.
is. It's such a loving accountability moment of I feel like we've come full circle with this podcast about how important it is to just ask for help, whatever it looks like for you. Don't be afraid to be a human, okay? We all have these moments in time where we're going to have stressful seasons, we're going to have stressful situations that we're dealing with, stressful relationships, stressful parenting. It comes with being a human. And it's so important that we offer ourselves that grace of being able to ask for, seek, and receive support on a personal level, on a professional level, on all of the levels. And I wanted to ask before we wind up, when it comes to, first and foremost, like leaving our audience with a message, leaving them with a loving message to if let's say there's someone who's in the exact same position that you were in.
Oh, God.
No.
I'm so sorry.
I have a couple of questions. So just as we get towards the end, guys, I'm going to make sure that we grab some details from Lauren. So they're going to be available for you to access in the show notes, but also we're going to touch base on them at the end of this episode as well. But two last questions. I'm going to ask you first, what would you leave the audience with?
I think that I could probably say quite confidently to 90, 95, maybe even 99% of the audience that you are drastically underestimating how much stress plays a fact in how you feel when you wake up in the morning, your waistline, your immune system function. You are severely underestimating that. And it's something that you can actually make really sometimes quite simple but yet really profound changes in your life to impact your stress levels. So, yeah, don't. This is such an area of interest for me and such a passion because I've lived it and it is my experience. I would rather people not follow me down that path and just learn from what I've learned and learn that there are so many things available to you now to help live really well in this modern world. And I think if I can help people that come through my clinic, the best thing that I can do for them is I just want you to live well. That whatever that looks like for you, that's all I want for you. I just want to be a helping hand to help you live well and hopefully live long and well.
Well, that brings me to the last two questions. One is a question that I asked my last podcast guest to leave for my next podcast guest. And that question was, why do you do what you do?
I don't think I've ever entertained doing anything else, to be honest. But years ago, I read a quote that it was talking about to find what is the meaning of life. And I can't remember who said it now, but they said the meaning of life is to find your gift and then give it away. And I actually had that engraved on something, and it's in my room, and I see it every morning when I wake up. And that is the whole business plan.
I love that. It's so beautiful.
Whether that's a good business plan or not, I don't know, but that is what it is. That is my gift, and I give it away.
And the last question that I would ask before we just ask where everyone can find you is, what would you ask my next podcast guest?
I want to say, what is your joy? But if it's not your work, it's not your family, it's not these things, but what is your joy?
Yeah.
And yes, and they can't say work or family or anything.
I love that. All right. And I am going to ask you, what is your joy?
What is my joy? Creating things. I'm not necessarily that amazing at anything, but I love pottery, and I love building a business, and I love painting.
I
And
love that. That's
all those
beautiful.
things. Yeah.
I'm going to challenge you on that. I think you're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Where can we find you? Where can everyone find you?
So www.neurobalance.clinic is the website. You can get a whole bunch of information there. You can also book in for a program.
And
I work with
want to follow along on your journey?
Yes, so Instagram, Facebook. I'm getting better at Facebook. Instagram is going well. Facebook, I'm not great at social media, but it's building out there. But yes, or you can book a free 15-minute call with me through the website as well to talk through your unique situation and how this could possibly help you, and get really specific about what your program would entail.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Connection podcast, Lauren.
Thank
We'll make sure to put Lauren's details in the show notes. So if you have any questions, if you want to follow along, come and hang out. And if you have any questions, if you want to dive a bit deeper, if anything came up around this episode, you know where to find me, Lauren_Dry on Instagram, and Lauren Rogers @